Welcome to Life by Design, episode 324. Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and I'm joined today again by my colleague, Dr. Cratio Judd.
It feels like it's been a while, so I'm happy to be doing this.
Yeah, it's great to have you back, Cratio. We are the creators of Life by Design with, I used to say 25, then 25 plus. But
many.
It's just many. We look at the number of elite doctors now who are involved in Life by Design. I just want to keep saying many. It could say 50 plus at this point. It's really fantastic. So we are the creators of Life by Design with many locations worldwide. Each week on the show, we discuss the principles and the practice of Life by Design. Today, we're talking about a great topic. Absolutely, without question, one of my favorites, and something we just spent 20 minutes talking about, and that's what are you leaving your kids? And specifically today, Cratio, we're talking about legacy. That's something I know that we think about, something that's actually incorporated into the Perfect Life Planner, part of the Think by Design program. We'll actually put that in the show notes, guys. You can grab the ebook and do the free 30-day challenge. So go over to lifebydesign.com/podcast and check out today's episode. Everything will be there. I think a great way to start, Cratio, is maybe tell us the story of the Rockefeller fortune.
Yeah, so my understanding of this, and I'm far from well-read on other people's money, but when we look at the classic great American families, right? The ones that built the infrastructure to civilization. So the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts. There's only one fortune that's still around, and that is the Rockefeller fortune. And one of the reasons, I'm sure there's other ones, but one of the reasons is that because JD set up certain requirements for the heirs to inherit part of the fortune. He didn't just want these people to become, trust fund babies, with a silver spoon in their mouth. They got nothing. And I'm sure there's lots in the family who ended up getting nothing, but they got nothing until they did certain things in life. So they had to meet certain goals. And then, for however many levels or however far they got, then they got part of the fortune. And that's one of the reasons why it's still around, because money, right? It's that whole principle of knowing how to make money versus just spending money.
Well, I think it just kind of encapsulates all of that, which we're talking about today, this idea of, leaving a legacy. And it's not just, hey, I left some nice cars to my kids or a nice house or, even bigger things that, we could still probably look at as potentially part of the legacy, like the Life by Design Center or your office. It's really about, leaving them with the ideas, the principles, the values, the virtues. And I think you said it best in the pre-show. So I'm going to use your words here, Cratio. You said,
Yes.
You really, the definition for you as to whether you're a good parent, and you look back over your children's lifetime and you say, okay, was I a good parent? I think your definition was great. And it's, do my kids wake up excited to live their life? Regardless of what that life is it, going out and making $20 an hour? Is it, becoming an extremely financially successful person? Is it, being a musician or an artist or whatever else they decide for themselves? At the end of the day, the most important thing, and I feel the same way, and we'll talk and kind of reverse engineer how we would like to leave this for our children and how our listeners could take some of that and leverage it into their lives. But it's, are my kids waking up happy? Are they living a life that's healthy, that's vibrant, where they're fulfilling whatever potential in their life they've chosen that they want to? Because the flip side, and sometimes it's a great way to look at this, the flip side is, imagine what it would feel like to you, Cratio, if, Ari and Betty, they're 15, 16, 20, 25, 30, and what of their life is they wake up, they're depressed, they're, maybe they've chosen to be medicated, they don't like what they do, they don't like who they're with, or they're with nobody and they don't like that, they're not doing anything that they love to do in their life, probably also experiencing a certain level of health decline in that process. How does that make you feel as a parent?
Well, obviously not great. However, it can be great if they can flip that into the leverage point to create the great life, right? Sure. Let's not pretend, Jamie, for 1 second, right, that we don't know what it feels like. And, still to this day, not every day is awesome. right? There's days like I'm happy when I roll out of bed, but like there's things that have happened or that happen every day. You're just like, oh, that wasn't awesome.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're ever going to escape that. But I look back at some of the times, I guess I just was stubborn and I never gave up. Like I knew there was something better and I just kept moving along. And I don't know, to me, and again, it all depends on what your values are as a human being. You don't need to have our values, but being happy is the most important thing. That is the purpose of your life, as far as I'm concerned.
I absolutely agree. And I think an important distinction is the difference between being challenged or being stressed and being happy. I think people put those two together and they think, well, if I'm stressed, I'm unhappy. If I'm, having a difficult day, I'm unhappy. And so to me, I've had some, extremely challenging days. And by all means, there's been a time in my life where I've truly been unhappy. That's, like you said before, I'm not suggesting that's never happened. I've been in some very dark places. But let's take, for example, the last, 7 years, 8 years, as much as there's been difficulties and challenges in so many different ways, and there still is every day, I'm still generally a very happy person, even in the midst of that. And I think that's what we're getting at as a legacy to leave to our kids is, yeah, they may go through challenges, tough times, but they have the ideals, the principles, the values, and the virtues to know that they can succeed. And to go back, I believe it was Rockefeller, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was it him who said, or was it Carnegie who said, if I lose my fortune today, I'll be a millionaire again in a year?
I think Carnegie.
And so, talking about a millionaire, and this was, how many decades ago. So basically saying, look, I could lose all of my fortune, but I have the skill set and the values and the ability to go out and create. And whether it's money, whether it's building relationships, it doesn't matter. The point is, it's having the, again, that just absolute knowing of yourself that you have what it takes to be a happy, a successful person. And I think that for me, that's what I want to give my kids is I want them. And so now we're talking about reverse engineering it. When you have that mindset and you're actually giving consideration to the legacy you're going to leave your kids, I think it definitely changes your perspective on allowing them to experience difficulties and challenges versus, not wanting them to be upset or not wanting them to be challenged.
Oh, 100%. I think if anything, when we look at, the world today, I would say, and we can argue about what's the most common or the biggest, but I think just the lack of responsibility and the lack of, the lack of struggle that's experienced on a daily basis. I think parents more than ever, and again, I get it. I'm a parent. I don't want my kids to struggle unnecessarily, but it's part of it, right? Like we're from the culture now, where somebody doesn't make the hockey team and the parents call the coach and yell at the coach, or the kid doesn't do good on a test and they push them through anyway because they don't want to deal with this terror for another year. Like, what is that teaching the kid, right? That's teaching them that it doesn't matter. Somebody else will take care of it for you. And self-esteem, right? Learning to esteem yourself and to value yourself is the exact opposite. It's you figuring out how to do it for yourself.
Yeah. And we're preaching obviously to the choir here, to each other. Hasn't always been that way. I know that for sure with me. There was lots of times where I had no idea about any of these concepts, and really, as much as my parents did their best and definitely instilled in me some values that I still hold to this day in terms of dedication and ambition and work ethic. I think, for us, and for our listeners, really, how can we be more conscious as parents to reverse engineer the outcome, right? So if you've actually sat down with your partner or if you're a single parent and decided, here's the values that I'd love for my children to at least get exposed to, and here's some of the virtues that I think would really help them as a person. How do I put them in situations to develop this? Or how are we going to handle behavior, let's say, as an example? How are we going to handle punishment or reprimanding them? These are all things that if you know what the end is going to look like or what you'd like it to look like, I believe it drastically changes the day-to-day interaction with your children versus when you just think, well, I'll just be a parent, whatever that means. And if you do something wrong, you'll be in trouble. And if you do something right, I'll give you a cookie. And, we don't really think about what is this going to look like at age 12 and 15 and 20. And I see it. I'm sure you do. The people in our practice, some people have got it down. There's no question. But I asked a lot of kids this week, what are you doing for the summer? Oh, nothing. And I mean, I'm talking about kids that were 15, 16, 17 years old. I can tell you when I was 15, 16, 17, nothing wasn't really an option.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're right. I'm listening to you talk. There's so much like good stuff there. I think it's worth it to talk about some of the values. I think, I think we're bucking the trend on this one. I don't think most people think about legacy, until they get older, right?
Right.
There's no thought of legacy, like, or it's fleeting in the sense of what's going to happen to my kids when I die, right? Those are like more serious questions at the end, but like, those are the things that you're right. It does change how you parent, how you interact. And it also changes like your level of stress. Like for a very concrete example, like it really bothers me when parents get really upset that their kid's not toilet trained. I'm like, there's no adults that can't poo or pee on the potty. Like they're going to figure it out eventually. Like just give the kid a break.
Right. They're going to get there.
Right. So it's the same kind of thing, right? So, but if you understand that they're going to poo and pee, then there's no pressure put on this kid and it changes your parenting style. So now imagine that you're asking yourself, or you're thinking at least occasionally, like once a week or even once a quarter, what am I going to do? Like what values, what thoughts, what ideas do I want to leave my children with? And how am I parenting them right now? Like when we look at the state of the world, we talk about this concept of self-esteem. Yourself is important and you should value yourself and you should take care of yourself. And we see these memes, all over the place. You can't you can't give somebody if your cup is unfull, right? But the values culturally are that other people's happiness are more important than yours. So that's a massive and deep rooted contradiction. You're important sometimes, but everyone else's opinion of you is much more important.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there, right? There's so much there, like, both as adults and as kids. Oh my goodness, great show.
Right. So, but just think about that. So now we want a kid that has self-esteem, but yet we're worried about what other people are thinking about us.
That's right.
We're worried about, what so-and-so said about us. We're worried about, what the chatter is on Facebook, or we're worried about, how we're posing on Instagram to look good to get likes and shares from other people. And again, I'm not knocking any of these things. If these things are important to you, good for you. They're just not important to me. Right. What's important to me and what's happening in my brain is I'm working on reducing all of the outside chatter. And the only voice that I want to hear in my head is my own voice and the valued opinions of the people who have already gained my trust and, that I value. I'll listen to their opinions, but nobody else gets to talk to me.
Yeah. And I think I agree, as often we do. And having this, board of advisors for yourself of people who have similar values to you, who've shown their integrity, shown their dedication to the relationship that you've built with them. And yes, I'll take their advice into consideration. I think for each person, though, recognizing that you have your own veto card, right? This is your life. At the end of the day, you're going to put the veto on it. You're going to make the decision, because the flip side is you have to be willing to be responsible for that. And with our children, we're not really giving them an opportunity to be responsible for the choices they're making. And I think that if we can get into this for a couple minutes, I think this is at least what I see where there's a big problem is I think on the surface, we understand the concept, right? We understand the challenge them. And of course, we don't want to see them struggle, but we get it. But I think we get to this point where we're not willing to make that, it's not a decision. We're not willing to take a stand in that sense. So let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say there was a child, 16 years old, we use as an example. And you said, look, you really need to have a job, and you give all the reasons. And the child says, yeah, I'm not going to do it. I think most parents would say, well, you're going to do it. And there'd be a battle back and forth. And at the end of the day, are they really going to take an extreme action to quote unquote force them into a job? Like, well, then you don't live here, or whatever the decision is. And I think the children, and whether it's the time or whether it's before, I have no idea. They just recognize that they have all the leverage because the person that they're essentially having this negotiation with isn't willing to take it to the extreme.
I understand the point. I agree. I don't think you have to take it to an extreme. Number one, this is the thing, right? So you kind of context drop in the sense that you took a 16-year-old with no backstory. So these are the conversations that start when like the kids are young. Like they have to learn that their behaviors or their in-behaviors, their choices or their lack of choices in the circumstances will always produce some type of result. And it's always their responsibility, whether they got a positive result or a negative result, right? Like to get that. And this starts with like, give me some water. Right? Well, no, I'm busy right now. You're tall enough. The water's on your level. You can get the glass. Go ahead and pour yourself some water. And like, if you don't go ahead and do it, you're not going to have a cup of water. Like, it's really just that simple. Like, so let's
stop there. But let's stop there for a second. So this is what I'm saying. So that's fine. And then the child goes and gets the water. But what happens when the child falls on the floor and kicks and screams and cries? How many parents, probably me included at times, walk over and say, fine, I'm going to go get the water because I don't want to deal with this. And so are we willing to continue to go down that path where we're going to, I just think this is a big issue, is the children, I'm not saying little tiny infants, but I'm saying as we grow and develop, the consequences are not actually there. And
yes,
I just don't think there is. I just don't think there's a strong enough consequence. At some point, somebody's going to actually give in to this, negotiation. And I think typically it's the parent.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, in that case, if my initial thinking in that situation would be like, well, you're just not going to have money to buy stuff, like you're off the family payroll, except for like food and the bare necessities. But if you want to go hang out with the boys or play some or buy something, then
or have a phone or have data and I think this is where we have to go, right? Is we have to be willing to take a stand on principle. How are we going to teach our children about principles if we're not willing to hold them to a principle?
Oh, sure. I totally agree. And I mean, well, here's the thing, right? This is why there's lots of, in life, like that's happened to me many times. It's why in my own personal life is when nobody could face the consequences but me, that ended up being the best long-term things that happened to me in my life.
Definitely.
Right? Like my parents did everything for me. Like I was the kid. I would throw a tantrum. They were like, oh, honey, no problem. We'll do it for you. Right. But like when you get cancer and you're sick, your parents can't do that for you.
Right.
Right. When something happens and you're faced with the crisis and there's no way out but you. This is why I love healthcare, by the way, because it's like that. Like you have to take responsibility for your health. Nobody else can. But it was in those moments where that was like the birth of self-esteem for me. Because before that, I was like soft, and in physically and spiritually too.
Yeah. No, I think this is really the crux of what I want the legacy to be for me, for my children, for anybody who has exposure to me, really is, learning to take responsibility for your life, learning to become strong enough to know that inherently you can accomplish, it sounds cliche, but it's cliche probably because it's true, is that you can accomplish, within whatever reason or ability, whatever you set yourself out to do, or whatever version of that you're pursuing. And that whatever challenge exists, you have the ability to overcome that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think there's too many people listening to the podcast that would disagree with that. The issue always with these things becomes when it's time to take action on that.
Well, that's it. Right? I'm not saying that they disagree. I'm saying that they're not willing to do the work in those moments, like holding your child to the value or principle. It's all great to talk about it, but I see very few people actually taking action and executing on it.
Well, I mean, it's hard too, because society isn't conducive to that, right? Like we're at a point now where people don't actually want to share their feelings because they're scared that somebody will like disagree with them and like yell at them. So people don't open their mouth and they don't share how they feel, and they get put into these situations where like, oh my God, everybody's watching me. So I'm just going to, it's sad, man. It's sad and it's hard. Like it's not easy. You have to first train yourself. And again, people are going to be wondering, well, how do I do this? Well, it starts with yourself. Right? Like you have to be a role model for your kids. My personal belief is especially with little kids, I can lecture Ari till the cows come home. He's 5.5 years old. He's not going to understand all the words that are going to come out of my mouth, but he sees me model the behavior, right? Like I take him with me to my appointments. He sees the way that I treat other people, right? He sees kindness and he sees that dad is calm, but in control. He might not use those words, right? But he sees you doing the actions. He sees how I was just having this conversation with my wife when we were away, like my dad taught me everything that I know about how to treat women because the way that he treated my mom, yet we never had the birds and the bees talk. Right? Like it was just the way that he interacted, the way he spoke kindly to her, the way that he treated her, the way he was gentle, but he was firm, the way they argued. All those things are the lessons, right? So there was never a contradictory, well, this is what you're supposed to do, but I do the complete opposite when I talk to your mom.
Right.
No, so right. I learned like consent and not consent and kindness and monogamy and relationships from the way that my dad interacted with my mom.
Yeah, and it's the same for your kids and my kids and anybody listening, right?
You got it.
Do they come to the gym? Are they involved in what foods we eat? Do we talk about it? How do we treat each other?
What's the conversation around the table? What do mom and dad talk about when we think the kids aren't listening, but are really listening? Right? What's the emotional state at home? Is it disarray or is it calm?
Yeah. Now, that's a great conversation, Horatio. And I think just even today's podcast, if it sparks some thinking for the parents who are listening in, or the people who don't have children and maybe will or won't. What is the legacy that you're thinking about? What is the legacy that you plan on leaving for your kids? And we talked a lot about it today, but you could have no kids and it could just be your legacy in general. Have you given consideration to it? I always thought it was one of the most important tabs that we added to the Perfect Life Planner because, I think that it's like looking at something from the top level. You're just so much better addressing the day-to-day things when you've given this huge, it's even bigger than vision, this idea of legacy and how that trickles down to everything you do and say and how you act.
Well, let me, I know you're going to wrap it up because I can tell by the way you're wrapping it up, but let's look at it this way. You're going to leave a legacy for your children, whether you like it or not. They're going to remember you for something. So it better, because we all know people who hate their dad because he was an alcoholic and he was never around. That's the legacy. That's not a legacy that's okay in my books.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right. It's kind of like the idea of, you're going to have an effect on your health one way or the other. Is it going to be one that's positive or is it going to be one that's negative? And
well, it's like Rand,
same idea, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. It's like Rand's thing. You have a philosophy, whether it's conscious or unconscious, you have a set of beliefs that guide your action. So you have a philosophy.
Right. So it's just a matter of you as to whether you're going to give it some thought and make sure it's aligned or whether it's just going to pile up and accumulate and
junkie
said, be a junkie. You got it.
Junkie.
So, guys, go to the show notes. There's a lot of good stuff in there in terms of the Think by Design manual book, if you'll call it that. Horatio put a lot of time into it. It's been edited and it really comes across well. So
it's been edited. Yeah.
I don't mean for spelling, Horatio.
1,000 times.
I don't mean for spelling. I just mean it's been really,
I do.
It's been put together very, very well. And it really is, to me, it's almost a manifesto of what you hear on the podcast, but with specific action steps and an execution plan for you to put some of this stuff into play. So it's a freebie that we give out anytime we talk about a Think by Design topic. Please go download it. I think you're really going to love it. And of course, let us know if you do, or even if you don't, we're totally open to that too. So go there, lifebydesign.com/podcast. Check it out. And as always, thank you for joining the drive to 1 million families worldwide living life by design.